What's going on YouTube? Kensou here again, brand new video. Welcome back to the channel. So what we're gonna do today is take a in-depth look at Baiken's parry mechanic, or her Hiiragi parry, whichever one you want to call it, but we're gonna make sure we call it Hiiragi for this video, right? That's what it's called in the command list, right? I did a lot of lab work on this character as of her release, and I found a ton of things about her. I do think that her Hiiragi should be highlighted, because this move is kind of like, in some cases, the hallmark of her playstyle, if you will, or her previous playstyle, if you will. Baiken's counter parry game is very, very important, and there are some things I want to point out to you guys. So before I get into all of that, don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe to stay up to date with everything and anything happening on this channel. So let's get right to it, and let's take a look in depth at Baiken's Hiiragi. Baiken's Hiiragi, at a glance, is a very powerful tool, as it essentially joins the ranks of the meterless reversal options in Strive, right? It's great to combat aggression, and the big reason for that is Hiiragi is actually a 1-frame counter that is active for 6 frames, and it does a lot of damage when it's actually successful, right? In other words, this move essentially is similar to Volcanic Viper, Vapor Thrust, Beta Blade, all those uppercuts and other reversal options, right? So what we're gonna do here, right, we're gonna take a look at Hiiragi, but I've broken this up into 2 parts, right, for how this move works. There is Hiiragi catch, where it's a successful parry, and there is Hiiragi repel. So I'm gonna start here with Hiiragi catch. Hiiragi catch essentially is, as I mentioned before, it is a successful parry when Baiken catches the opponent. The upside to this move on catch is it is unburstable static damage against your opponent, and in this case it's actually top class. You know, essentially it does static damage much like a super. So you can think of it as a super, or an overdrive if you will, for no meter. So what this entails is that in pressure strings with any kind of gaps, you know, as I mentioned before, it is 1 frame. You can't sneak it in there based on reading how your opponent's pressuring you, and you can use it to score some big damage. And of course, like anything else in this game, if you have meter, you can Roman cancel it to extend and get more damage. And it also leads to something that I want to point out here, and it is Baiken's Hiiragi catch after RC actually is really good for anti-burst, right? So if you think that your opponent is going to burst, you can RC, and you can go into Kabari and essentially be burst safe. So it's really neat for her to do that and stay burst safe. Really, really strong part about this move. Now, there are other things to note about Hiiragi, is that Hiiragi can also be option selected against moves that cross up. So what that entails is Leo's whites, or take for example Amelia doing air dash pressure, air dash jump H into air dash H again as a cross up, and you can catch, you know, these kinds of cross up attacks, right? The input for that would be quarter circle back, P plus K. Now I use P plus K because it's just easier for me. You can use pretty much any combination of button with the reversal parry, just hit punch and any other button that you can, and you should be able to get this. Again, static damage, really great for cross ups. If you do mess it up and or you do get, let's say that they don't cross you up but you went for it, you'll still end up FDing, which is really strong. Keep that in mind. I think this should go without saying, obviously. I'm going to put this here in the catch section, that if you miss this counter, obviously it's going to spell disaster for you. It's like any other reversal in the game, so there's not really much that needs to be said about, you know, missing a counter, right? So we don't need to go any further than that. Also, if you guys didn't already know, which you should, Arxis did release that her Hiiragi does not counter projectiles, so you can't use it against projectiles whatsoever. You should know that. We're not going to talk about that. All in all, from the Hiiragi catch standpoint, it is very strong, especially in the interrupting pressure strings, correct? So I think that kind of can sum it up here for Hiiragi catch. So now that we've looked at Hiiragi catch, we're going to look at Hiiragi repel. Now I've coined this Hiiragi repel because it seems like they wanted to bring something from Samurai Shodown into Strive. If you guys didn't know, Baiken was a guest character in Samurai Shodown. So this is kind of similar to like recoil, you know, when you block like a move or whatever. So, or you can call it the real back state, right? But we'll stick to calling it repel, right? The way Hiiragi repel works is if you are using Hiiragi against any move at long distance or long range physical attacks, it only will repel the character. You don't get to actually catch them like it's Hiiragi catch up close, because that's how they made it, right? So unfortunately, repel state doesn't lead to too much for Baiken, which I think is pretty bad. In fact, there are a few situations where trying to Hiiragi some moves will lead to repel state, and in some cases return said characters to neutral, right? So I have a few examples here featuring Faust, Axel, and Potemkin. These are some moves that are kind of things you don't really want to use Hiiragi against. So I really just wanted you guys to see this for yourselves to see exactly what happens, right? Now, this in turn leads to a fairly inconsistent counter for some of our matchups that are tough. Now, I know you can see this and just say, well, just don't use Hiiragi in that situation. Now, I agree. Like 100%, you guys, I agree with you 100%. I'm sure that's what you're thinking, right? But I do believe that this also leaves, you know, something to be desired for Baiken when she actually does use Hiiragi on long range attacks, right? So I did think of something that I believe would probably help Baiken out in this situation to make Hiiragi better, maybe in a future update for the game, right? What I think should happen is, I think if you do Hiiragi, maybe after you get it, you press kick, and Baiken will now go into her command dash, Suzerain, which will help her cover distance at the very least, and maybe leave her at somewhat of a plus situation. Maybe a +5, maybe something no more than +5. I think right now it's about +2 or neutralish, somewhere in that ballpark. You can let me know if I'm wrong in the comments and just help me correct that situation there. So I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. But in addition, I do think that if you have 50 tension, that you should also be able to go back into her, what we call Attack on Titan super, where she throws the zip lines similar to what she had in Xrd, which allowed her to get closer to the opponent and do some pretty solid damage. So I think those two follow-ups would be really, really great, and I think it would be a great way to kind of bump up her kit to be a little bit more effective. And I think she could round out a little bit more with what she currently has, on top of whatever they want to add to her later on, right? So, in conclusion, I do want to say that Baiken's Hiiragi does have some pros and cons, you know, just to round this video out. So for her pros, she has unburstable static damage. Her counter starts up at frame 1 while having 6 active frames to catch anything, which is really strong. When it's successful, it leads to fantastic anti-burst situations, or if you will, checkmate type situations. I think all that's really good for her. I think that kind of sort of sums it up for her pros. And the cons, unfortunately, this move has a lot of recovery, no different than, you know, a reversal DP. Baiken is also left in counter hit state, much like the DP. Mid-screen Hiiragi doesn't really have any major reward, and certain moves that are airborne throw the enemy back to neutral, aka putting them back in their win condition, thus making some matches for Baiken very, very difficult. So with all that being said, like I said before, I wanted to keep this video short and sweet, give you guys some information, some stuff that I figured out. Hopefully you guys take this information and you do what you will with it. Hopefully you guys can keep pushing this character. Maybe learn a thing or two with this here. I'm gonna call it here in this video. and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care, play more Guilty Gear. See you later. Peace.